I'm in northwestern Sydney, which is a good 40 to 50 k's away from the centre of Sydney in the northwest. Out here in Rouse Hill, we've got Castlebrook Cemetery where I'm standing now. The cemetery's grown quite a lot over the last few years, but one of the things the cemetery's somewhat famous for those who've studied Australian history, is it is the site of the Battle of Vinegar Hill. And this is the memorial here in Castlebrook Cemetery to the battle. So it's a fairly interesting history. It was a convict rebellion that happened over at Castle Hill at the government farm. And then there was a lot of back and forth with the British troops heading back into the city to get reinforcements, or back into what was then Sydney, so certainly not the city back then. But then this incredible pursuit overnight. Now, there's been a lot of conjecture about where the battle may have occurred. If you read the Sydney Gazette from the time that was contemporary, it does mention down there is Windsor Road, and it mentions the British soldiers coming up Windsor Road, and it talks about them coming to the adjoining road, which is just over that hill, and that the battle took place somewhere in this area. Now, the memorial sits up here on the hill, but when you read one of the other first-hand accounts, it's in a letter by one of the soldiers. He talks about going over a rise, and as they came over the rise, they saw the Irish convicts and the rebels on top of the hills. Now, I'm pretty sure that area that he's referring to is that green zone in there, because if you're walking on the road, it's very different to when you drive, but if you're actually walking, you can sense that rise and that slight bend, which he describes in his letter. And as they come in, then they come in the side of each other. The British form up, the firing begins. So most likely that at least the initial part of the battle, I would argue, started down in that green area there and then pushed up this hill. As to how far up, be it both this way to the north and also to the west, potentially a fair bit of ground would have been covered. So that was the initial confrontation of the battle. Would have taken down somewhere down there, and there is one picture that has been made of the battle, which no one knows for sure no one knows who painted the picture, but also it's unsure as to whether it was done sort of immediately after or not. But the landscape, the trees in the background of that are very similar to what we see here, some of the remaining older growth, and you see that as you go further up the hill. So a few other interesting things I note about the Vinegar Hill battle site here, the Australian one, because it's based on a Irish convict battle as well. That's where they took the name from, that idea of rebellion, death or liberty, which you see all over associated with the battle. So the memorial is up here, so it's very much on the crest of the hill. I'll just go closer. So if you're not familiar, you can take a look. You can easily Google the history of the battle itself, but as I said, it started with the government farm and things going wrong there, and then within a day, the English troops, the British troops had gone back to down to what is now where the city of Sydney sits, and got reinforcements, joined up with further reinforcements from Parramatta, come up through Toongabbie and Windsor Road and Constitution Hill. And then the Irish really just lacking leadership more than anything, where it seems like the accounts kind of give the idea that basically it was a bit of a shambles of what to do next. So even though they most likely had the numbers, didn't have the organisation. Here's another plaque, so I'll just show that as I'm talking. So these are the people who were killed or executed during or immediately after the battle. And then the other thing that you take away from what's written about Vinegar Hill is that there were a number of people who died during the confrontation itself in the morning. And then what happens after that is there's then skirmishes that go for the rest of the day. And essentially they come over this hill. So if I walk to the crest of the hill, you may be able to make this out. So the battle would have been fought up the hill, up to this high ground. Now remember, this would have been much thicker bush back in those days. And they fight their way across here. And then what we've got down behind us is we've got a whole lot of housing these days. So I'll just come across the road so you can get a sense, because I want to try and show you some of the bush that looks more like it would have in the past. All right, so see those bigger trees? Now I dare say none of those are a couple of 100 years old. Some of them might be pushing it. But that's the kind of trees, you see those, but a lot of scrub, a lot of bush. And I'll take some footage a bit further down the hill so you can see, because I imagine that's literally what they were fighting through, was this kind of area. So as you can gather, like northwestern Sydney continues to grow at a pretty rapid rate in the last sort of 10 to 20 years. So the cemetery here has expanded quite a lot. It's much bigger even in the last few years. So there's a lot of work being done to try and expand the grounds of the cemetery, hence all the torn up ground here. But one thing this area is known for, so we're going from Rouse Hill and we're going down into what's now known as the ponds, although you do see that reference on older maps as well. It's not a modern suburb. It's just the suburb itself has been designated only in the last 10 years or so. But the kind of vegetation that we're looking at here is what they would have encountered, those convicts on the run, trying to get away from the redcoats. So they would have crested this hill, come down, and the big difference here is that you've got this kind of vegetation on top. So you've got these larger trees. Try and shadow the microphone from the wind a bit. And everything's been cleared underneath now, but back in the past this would have been all like scrub and bush underneath as well, and they would have come charging through this area. Obviously no houses in the background back in 1804. And you've got all of these pockmarked like ponds and billabongs and creeks going sort of through the environment even to this day. And that actually plays a really important role in it, because one thing, if you're local out here, if you know this area well, is that one thing where we've got the water in the ponds, and Second Ponds Creek is the main point, there are literally to this day brown snakes and red-bellied blacks everywhere. So you're coming out of being shot at up over the hill on that side, charging down through thick bush and dense scrub underfoot. You can see to this day how soft it still is. Look at the depth of those tyre marks where someone's tried to drive through and, you know, probably not gotten bogged, but not far off it. So really boggy even now that it's clear. I'm certain it would have been much boggier back in the day. And I think, to my understanding, it's about another 20 or so of the rebels are then killed from the battle that starts at the morning over on Windsor Road, coming up the hill, over this hill down, and going all the way across down to Second Ponds Creek. So if I zoom in over those houses in the distance, you should just be able to make out some towers. Let me just find those for you. There they are. Okay. So they're the lighting towers on one of the local sporting fields. They sit pretty much where Second Ponds Creek is. So that's the back end of the battle. That's where things apparently wrapped up. It's about, from here, probably about a K away. So I'm cutting back across what would be the reverse side of the 1804 Vinegar Hill battle site. So this is at the back of the cemetery, coming back onto some of the new housing, or 10-year-old housing, in the ponds. So again, just looking up, that's the kind of tree cover you would have had, but this would have been all thick bush and scrub on the ground. The colony hadn't been that long established, so some of it would have been cleared. And certainly if you look at the picture that's contemporary to when the battle occurred, there's definitely cleared ground, not unlike this in one part, and then these larger trees in the background of that as well. Now, one really interesting thing which I've never seen noted anywhere, and I think adds a really just a unique little twist to this story as well, because I don't think we certainly don't know, and I doubt we'll ever know for sure which came first. But as I mentioned, the battle takes place over that side of the hill. They come over the top, chase the convicts down this way. But one of the things that I've discovered over on this side, which is where I think the battle or the bulk of the fighting likely occurred, is on this southern side of Castlebrook Cemetery. Just looking at the way the geography works, it seems like the natural place that if you're going to run, you're not going to zigzag. You're just going to run straight and try and get out of there, especially if the bush is thick. Going sideways, you're just not going to get far enough away from those muskets. And they might not be that accurate, but in those days, really, you're probably not going to know how accurate they are or aren't. So I don't think you're going to take your chances trying to do any more running than you had to. So coming over to this area, there's something really cool. Now I can see it already just beyond these big trees. And if you look at that tree line, that's on the ridge of the hill. Again, that's probably giving you a good impression of what a lot of the area around the battle looked like 220 odd years ago. Thick bush, not overly big, but certainly very difficult going underneath. Pretty overgrown and unkept. What we've got down here now, this is something really, really interesting that I discovered a little while ago. I'm going to point it out. So we've got what remains. We've got one tree stump here in the foreground. Then there's a larger tree stump back there. Now all this grass has grown up around this one. So let's see, I might not be able to see it on this one. I can't, you have to cut that grass back. Okay, so it's not very clear, but let's go to the other one. And it is clear, but then there's something else as well. So this is probably one of the largest trees in the area. If you're familiar with Aboriginal culture, you may recognize what this is here. Okay, so this is scar tree. Okay, and this is traditional scar, and it's that folding back in. That's the real key thing, because they cut areas like this away to make shields or bowls. So this is quite large, so it could have even been a canoe. And these were cut, but they often serve multiple purposes as well. And when they were cut and the way they were cut caused this folding back in. So it's a very unique kind of scar that gets left on the tree. I see it's been marked off, so hopefully someone's realizes its significance. I'd imagine they do. So you've got this single scar tree here. Okay, you've got an older tree there, which I remember seeing some elements that looked like scarring before it was overgrown. This is very clearly scarring, and just take note, it's that way. Okay, so it's back over the hill. The main part of the battle happens there. So I'll do it in one continuous shot so you can appreciate it. We go this way. Okay, and what I'm doing, I'm heading towards that large grey tree stump, which is about 6 feet high. So yeah, around about the height of a person, or what's left of it. And what we can see here, so even though the tree has been cut, it probably got damaged in a storm given its age. Let's have a look here, right? The scar line here, the older timber, and then this timber which has been shown up underneath it, and the other scarring running clearly down this side. So we've got a scar on this side, we've got that scar up the hill. Okay, seen? Right, now where do those 2 points, if I can get them in one shot, where do they point you to? Straight up the center of the hill. We go up over that hill, we're looking down on the Battle of Vinegar Hill, we're looking on the site. I very much suspect, there's just this gut feeling that I've got, is that the Aboriginal people who lived here at the time, so the Darug people, perhaps after what happened, and maybe there were burials that were done here on site, decided that this area was somewhat taboo and marked it with these two markers, so that if you continue over, this is a taboo area, this is where violence has occurred, people have died. That's the feeling that I have, because I've seen these kind of markers out in the bush before where you see two scar trees together. Often they're a little closer than this, so I suspect there could have been more that have fallen down or been removed. But yeah, that this is an area to pay respects and probably a taboo area not to move about in. So it's a really interesting kind of little add-on to the story that we already have about the Battle of Vinegar Hill in 1804. All right, now we'll take a little walk. I'll pause for a second, we'll go a bit further down the hill. So I'm now down at the back on the western side of Castlebrook Memorial Cemetery. So again, just giving you an idea of the back of the cemetery point of view before it comes onto this first road of the new housing estates. So that's as far as the battleground with regards to Vinegar Hill runs, is down to this point. Then you've got some housing, but then it's important because the historical references tell us that the skirmishing and the chasing down of convicts continued for the rest of the day, and that it continued down to Second Ponds Creek. So what I want to do is give you just an appreciation of what that bush was likely to have looked at, because there is one patch of bush which has been maintained and kept in pretty much its original state. So we're going to head down through a couple of suburban streets and then take a look at that. All right, so as we come down here, coming down from the cemetery, and I'll just swing around slowly. So the cemetery's just there, just behind us at the end of the street there. Come down here to Peddle Parkway in the ponds, and we've got this reserve here, which pretty much takes up the entire block. I love it. I love the fact that this has been preserved. One of the fantastic things about its preservation is that it hasn't been sort of properly, brought into the 21st century. The tracks that we've got are these old tracks, which, again, a lot of snakes down here. So, in summer, certainly be careful, be mindful what you're doing if you want to come and explore down here. But what you're getting to experience here, this is what, outside of that cleared area where the Battle of Vinegar Hill seems to take place, I think this is really what the convicts and the British troops would have been dealing with, but particularly the convicts running. It's like, yeah, you can run and you can see how thick it is. Like if I just zoom in a little bit, like they're not huge trees, but the volume is so great that you can sort of quickly disappear into this area, but you've got to be careful because absolutely crawling, even to this day, with snakes. And not just one, but two extremely lethal varieties of snakes, which again, to this day remain here in very, very large numbers because this runs down to the creek. So this gives you an appreciation of, you're on the run, battles happen, you're trying to get out of here, you're heading west. Okay, if you keep heading west, you're going to hit the Blue Mountains, so the convicts would have been familiar with that, but that was like wild country. Some literally, I believe, thought that if you kept going across the Blue Mountains, you'd somehow end up in China. So think about that in perspective of like, you can run and you can get away, but like the unknown is truly the unknown, because what exists out beyond this forest is just so wild and out of the realm possibility. So you've even to this day got a few different walking points. So I'll take this route, which takes us down to the creek, or to the lake, should I say. But the lake joins onto Second Ponds Creek. So this is, if you want to imagine what, say, happened from the middle of the day through to probably nightfall in terms of the second part of the battle, where another 20 convicts were killed. And the records are somewhat sort of scarce on where, how and whatnot. I won't give it away, but certainly walking through here and walking closer down to Ponds Creek, there are definitely areas where I think we've got unmarked graves. Looking at the lack of vegetation in a couple of spots, the size of those spaces and the way that the terrain shifts. Okay, so there's no doubt, I think, that where some of those convicts fell, that they were most likely buried on the spot. Some of them may have been left out, but I think there were enough people sympathetic to their cause in the area that if the bodies were found after the fact, I think they would have given them a proper burial. So my gut feeling is that as long as people were able to find anyone that fell, that they would have been buried, but probably almost certainly buried on site. So it's just giving you a sense of the terrain, because it's the one thing, you can Google it all you want, you're not going to find this online. I certainly haven't found anything where anyone's come and walked the ground to this extent and just shown. I'm trying to show it now because you just never know with development. You know, one day this might get all developed and torn up. I really hope not, because it is beautiful to have this piece of forest that remains the way it most likely has, you know, for thousands of years. And then as we get to the end of this path, we get a bit more gravel where it's a little bit more maintained, and you can notice, or you might be able to notice, all the vegetation there changes. And just down there, just about 5 meters away, that's one of the waterways that feeds into the lake at the ponds. So in the past, convicts, because they said they went all the way to Second Ponds Creek, which means there probably wasn't a bridge here. If there was, it might have been a log. So dare say anyone who got this far went through this. Would have had to make their way through the creek. The creek, without a doubt, is where the highest volume of snakes are to this day, because even now the lake is full of tadpoles, there's eels, a lot of birds. So all the snakes congregate around here. So you want your freedom, you are really going to have to fight for it. I don't know if anyone actually made it away. I don't think it would have been in the interest of the authorities to report that. But I wouldn't be surprised if there are a few brave who after the battle got on the run and actually got past this point. So there's the down into one of the little waterways that connects to the creek, and then we go out here and you see out onto the lake down there. So one of the lakes that gives the ponds its name. And when it rains really heavily, several other lakes pop up, but they tend to drain pretty quickly these days. So there we go. So Battle of Vinegar Hill, bit of a walking tour. Hope you found that helpful. Any questions, anything you want me to go have a look at in the future, just let me know in the comments. Thanks and enjoy.